Welcome, everybody, and good evening.
Evening.
Good evening. I'm John Igliozzi, Chairman of the City Council Finance Committee. Welcome to this evening's festivities. It's October 22nd, 2020. It's Thursday. City Council Committee on Finance. We're going to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Chairman Igliozzi?
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Ryan?
Present.
Councilwoman Castillo?
Present.
Councilwoman Anthony?
Present.
Councilman Taylor?
Here.
We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So let's take items, if you could, items 1, 2, and 3. A motion to take items 1, 2, and 3.
May I ask a quick question?
So moved.
Do that?
One second.
So moved.
Councilwoman, we're gonna have to answer some. Motion to take up items 1, 2, and 3. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion. So before, Councilman Anthony, I think I may have an answer already to your question. As you know, last week we amended the comp and classification last week. And the purpose of the Finance Committee's purpose was, of course, to save the city of close to $4 million, as well as to put additional counts and controls on hiring in order to protect the city's finances, considering come January, when we finally figure out if we're going to get any money and how much money we're going to get from the state government. The state house is in no position at this time to pass their budget, and therefore eventually sometime, hopefully January, February next year, they'll finally pass their budget, and then we'll finally get appropriations. At that meeting, as I explained to my committee members and council colleagues, is that this was the beginning of a process to give the administration an opportunity to weigh in and have a conversation about what they think are ways to also save money and join us in this endeavor. One of the issues the administration was concerned about is they wouldn't have the flexibility in order to have, if someone left office the next couple of months, that they wouldn't be able to hire somebody at another position. Well, as how always we progress in these processes, it's always a process, it's always a public process. And I thank my committee members and council colleagues, is that we've been working with the administration the past week or so, the treasurer, the internal auditor, along with Mr. Mancini and Ms. Pollock and et cetera. And of course, we've been doing a give and take conversation, which is what government does. We are the legislative branch, they are the executive branch. The budget is before us, and now we have our opportunity to decide how much money is spent, how it is spent, what positions are hired, what positions are not hired. It is not a unilateral show the executive branch decides. It's a collaborative event by 2 co-equal branches of government. This evening, I'm going to be looking to continue these items to next week. And because we've shown a lot of progress, I'm going to have Mr. Mancini weigh in on that conversation real quick so he can further alleviate the fears of some of my council colleagues who are concerned that if the administration would have their say-so, and also to show up the concerns of my council colleagues who want to further have progress of promoting a financial stable city of Providence in the upcoming months. And we're going to call upon Mr. Lombardi and Gino Acosta. So what I'd like to do is just have Mr. Mancini, and then Ms. Costa and Internal Auditor, Mr. Lombardi, can you just tell us where we are? And I believe we're going to continue this matter and then follow up next week with our new amended, with some an additional amendment to these ordinances. Mr. Lombardi, Ms. Costa, Internal Auditor, do you want to weigh in on this point? Ms. Costa, Internal Auditor?
I can weigh in, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
So one of the concerns of the administration was flexibility. They agreed that they were not going to hire additional people. And through working with the administration, I think we have a solution to that, where we take no positions out, but we limit some hiring authority in regards to different departments. So I think we get to the same place. I think the auditor can give you a number on that, an approximate number of annual savings. And then my understanding is that this will be revisited sometime in the near future when the state passes their budget.
So before we get into that, the nitty-gritty of it. Mr. Mancini, do you corroborate the treasurer's presentation that we're all working together? Can you swear in Mr. Mancini, Madam Clerk?
Jimmy and all at the same time? Jimmy?
Sure.
Please raise your right hand to swear the penalty and perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
You are muted, Mr. Mancini. Mr. Mancini? We still cannot hear you, sir. I think
I think he's dialing in.
So while he's dialing in, Gina, the internal auditor, do you want to just quickly talk about where we are right now, and that we're going to continue? Let's not get into the specifics yet, so this way we can have a full conversation next week, because then it turns into it turns into a piecemeal conversation. I rather just want to get to a point where we are working with our equal branch of government, and that we are moving forward in a positive direction to address their concerns, but also to address this committee's concerns and a good majority of my council colleagues' concerns of creating financial stability in the city of Providence. So, internal auditor, can you just give us quickly, and have Mr. Mancini back on?
Yes, well, I do agree with everything that Jim said. We are trying to accommodate for the flexibility for administration, which they've requested. So we are working toward that goal, and we seem to have some form of agreement while ensuring the savings are there and no pay raises, et cetera, which the committee would like to see done. So yes, we have made great progress with that.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini.
Good job.
Mr. Chairman, let me just continue with my attestation. I do swear to tell the truth under penalty of pain and perjury, and identify myself as Lawrence J. Mancini, Chief Financial Officer of the City of Providence. Mr. Chairman, when I'm through, would you have Ms. Silveria sworn in as well? But in the meantime, I do in fact agree with both Treasurer Lombardi and Internal Auditor Costa. I want to commend the efforts of the council and council affiliates, along with the Chief of Staff Pollock, myself, and Ms. Silveria and our team, and that we have in fact worked through what I expect to be a viable solution to limiting the ability to widen payroll or impact on payroll during a time of uncertainty. So I do agree, and we support the changes.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Councilwoman Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I really do appreciate the fact that there are ongoing discussions between the city council and the city staff. And I just, as a member of the finance committee, would like to understand some of those conversations. My specific question is, are you still proposing to cut specific positions?
Well, Councilwoman, we're not there yet. So what I like to do is, in order not to, rock the boat during these negotiations with financial team and administration, I want them to finish out what they're looking to do, and then you have an opportunity. You can talk to the internal and the treasurer offline. They can give you some more details. At this time, I'm not ready to put forward the full package yet. Unlike the United States House of Representatives and the White House, we are trying to reach an accord in a quicker fashion in order for the benefit of all of the city of Providence. So I'd ask if you could, those questions you can ask them offline. I'm not ready to go into those particular details yet, because we haven't finalized what we think is the final package to be presented.
I appreciate that, but as a member of this committee, and I appreciate the fact that we're now directing me to speak with Jimmy and Gina, which is fine. But I think as a member of the committee, when we talk about an open and transparent process, the stuff that's being discussed, which many people on the committee know, but not everyone. I mean, that's when I would appreciate some opportunity for feedback.
No, you will. I mean, as of last, I will personally call you like I did the last time, and I will lay it all out and make sure you're presented with that information and prior to the event occurring.
Okay.
I do
appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. But I think
as I do with all my
conversations online with the public. But I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, most important thing is when we unwind the conversation in public, that we actually have a final, or at least a proposal that's put together in a solid package. Whenever you put forward a piecemeal proposal, in a public setting, the problem is, then you can't really get to the issue. So we want to try to have a good, solid proposal to the administration, and what we think kind of works. We'll inform, I'll have my conversation with my committee members like I always do prior, and then we'll get additional feedback, and then we hopefully can present it in a comprehensive, articulated, well thought out presentation. At the end of the day, the most important thing is to help save the city, protect its finances, and also to have a better understanding and a better position for the city to be in come January and February when the State House decides and decrees what they're going to give us and not give us. So we will get there. So I just want you to know that, and we'll continue to get to that point. All right? So if we can just indulge and hopefully do a little leap of faith, we will get there. All right? So with that, I also want to thank, I forgot to say to everybody, don't forget to vote. I voted today. Don't forget to vote. So what let's do is, so the motion is to continue items 1, 2, and 3 at this time to the next finance meeting, and hopefully by time 10, we'll have a full accord reach with the administration, and of course, all committee members will have an opportunity to weigh in at the appropriate time. We have a motion?
We've made the motion. There's a motion on the table, made and seconded. We're waiting for the vote, sir.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item, I think we have to take an item out of order, but first let the record reflect that Councilman Espinal is present.
So noted.
President Pro Tem Correa is present. Councilman Gunkov is present. Kenny Schiavone from the City Solicitor's Office is present. And I think I have everybody. And I'm sure I missed somebody, so I'm sure at the appropriate time they will correct me. But we're going to keep rolling. So I need to have a motion for item number 4, Madam Clerk. A motion to continue item number 4 indefinitely by request of the administration. Motion by
So moved.
Councilman, second by Councilman Castillo. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Next item, Madam Clerk, can we go to item number 5, please?
Communication from the Honorable Mayor dated September 17, 2020, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to Section 302B of the Providence Charter of 1980 as amended in Public Law, Chapter 45-50, Section 31, passed in 1987, he is this day appointing Monica Huertas of 216 Ohio Avenue, Providence, Rhode Island 02905 as a member of the Providence Harbor Management Commission for a term to expire on December 31st, 2023, and respectfully submit the same to your approval.
Great. And Monica Huertas. Oh, great. So could you please, Madam Clerk, please swear in the witness?
She's you got to mute yourself.
Ms. Huertas, could you please unmute yourself?
Yes, hi, can you hear me okay?
Now we can.
Oh, great.
Please raise your right hand. You swear to tell me the truth, that the testimony that you're about to give is the whole truth, and that's about the truth, so help you God.
I think she told me to raise my right hand, but I couldn't hear anything else. It said, I swear. I swear.
Okay, please state your name for the record. Thank you. Just state your name for the record.
Oh, Monica Huertas.
Well, welcome, Ms. Huertas. How are you today? First of all, hope your family is safe, healthy, and
Thank
doing
you,
well.
Dan. Thank you.
That's important. So it looks like you would like to become a member of the Providence Harbor Management Commission. Fantastic. Could you tell us a little bit about you, and then also why you want to become a member of the Providence Harbor Management Commission?
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for everybody here tonight. So basically, yeah, my name is Monica Huertas, and I am a founding member of the Racial and Environmental Justice Committee here in the city of Providence. Said committee has gained national attention, worldwide attention, actually, for the work that we do in terms of putting racial justice and equity at the center of environmental issues. And so basically what we're seeing a lot is, people are going green and people have these innovative ideas about being green. What does a green port look like? What does a green city look like? And so basically the community has come together, myself being a founding member and now a co-chair of the Racial Environmental Justice Committee. We have really been able to think about these environmental issues in a way that doesn't leave people behind, because who wants to do that, right? And so I think that being on this commission will help elevate the commission into a really good, solid commission where we can make some really good decisions for all people in Providence.
Great, thank you very much. Comments or questions by committee members? Councilwoman Anthony.
I don't have a question, but I just have to thank Ms. Huertas for all her work. She has been quite an advocate, and I think she would be an excellent addition to this committee. I'm always very impressed with the work she does and her advocacy, and I'm just very appreciative of the fact that she would like to serve on this commission.
Fantastic. Any other committee members or council members like to say? Councilman Espinal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to thank Monica for actually accepting this position. I think she'll be a great asset to the community, judging from the work that she's done in the community already. Her determination, her will to always be willing to help her community, her unprecedented work with the environment. She's a strong advocate. She's a mother. She's a wife. She's a great asset in the community. I just couldn't say enough. I think she's a perfect fit, and we'll be very lucky to have her. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments or questions by committee members, council members? That said, do we have a motion to recommend approval?
So
Motion to recommend approval, Mr. Chair.
By the Vice Chair, I have a second by Councilwoman Castillo, Councilwoman Anthony, and Councilman Taylor. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Fuentes. Congratulations. We thank you for your past service and also your future service. Keep up the good work and be well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your words.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the next person, please.
Communication from His Honor the Mayor dated September 17, 2020, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to Sections 302B and 1009 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980 as amended, he is this day reappointing Ron Crossan of 191 Dudley Street, Providence, Rhode Island, 02905, as a member of the Providence Public Building Authority for a term to expire on January 31st, 2025, and respectfully submit the same for your approval.
Thank you. Is Mr. Crossan present?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please swear in the witness, please?
Yes, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to the and perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
It's a waste to... I'm sorry, did he? All set, thank you. Well, welcome, Mr. Crossan. Thank you for participating this evening. Looks like you would like to become a member of the Providence Public Building Authority. Could you give us a little background of who you are, your education, et cetera, and why you would like to become a member of the Providence Public Building Authority, and what do you think you'd like to try to achieve, and what do you think the authority does? How's that? You have the mic, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, as well as members of the Finance Committee. Again, my name is Ron Crossan. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Providence. I went to Penn State University, graduated with a degree in finance, came out, worked with Citizens Bank and branch management for several years before running a family business and my own business, which totaled about a period of about 20 years in the insurance industry. And currently, I'm the executive director of Urban Ventures, which is a nonprofit created out of state legislature to work with businesses in underserved communities. This would be a reappointment to the existing position on the Providence Public Building Authority. Currently, the work that we are doing, I'm really happy to see overseeing, along with my fellow members of the board who are here with us tonight. James Mclaughlin, Vincent Kilbridge. Vincent is our treasurer. Scott Slater is our secretary, and Chairman Stanley Weiss serves and is providing great leadership. Currently, in terms of what we do at the PPBA is really to manage the bonds that have been issued. We are the agency that issues bonds on behalf of the city of Providence as an independent agency, and oversee currently right now, I believe there's 5 series of bonds that we're currently doing, overseeing the implementation of the CIP, which has been put forth by the administration and approved by the city council. Our task is to make sure that we basically execute on what is intended by the administration and city council to get things done on behalf of the city's taxpayers, the city's residents, and to do so in the most efficient manner. In addition to that, I'm really happy that we are working on increasing minority business and women-owned business participation in the contracts that we are issuing. So we are currently working to increase that participation rate. During the time that I've been serving, we have been happy to see that the number has been going up. We've been working on making sure that the reporting out is really included in each of the meetings that we're attending. And we're also working closely with Director Diaz in terms of making sure that we can make significant improvement in the upcoming CIP.
Thank you. Comments, questions by committee members? Councilwoman Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Crossan, very much for your interest in continuing to serve on the Public Building Authority. I just have a question for you, and it's something I probably should know, but I cannot seem to remember it. How is it that you report on the activities of the authority?
I'm sorry?
Do you do annual reports, or do you report to anyone, or on the activities of the authority?
Yes, well, the meetings are held monthly. Those are public meetings in accordance with the open meetings law. So those are posted. If special meetings, sometimes there is a need to hold a special meeting in between. An example of that might be if there are invoices that need to pay, because it's very important that we provide prompt payment, and perhaps documentation came in too close to the monthly meeting for us to really give it proper consideration. So board members, it's a fairly small board, so we have the ability to really schedule a special meeting if need be, so we can make sure that work gets done. We are also audited each year, and that documentation is public as well and submitted to the city.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and thank you for your interest to continue serving.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Anthony. Vice Chair Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to ask, this is a reappointment for you. How long have you served on that board?
This would be the first reappointment. So time goes by fairly quickly. So I believe it's been 5 years.
5 years. Good for you. Thank you. Anytime I see a reappointment, I'm always excited. It's always good to see folks come back and reaffirm their commitment to the city of Providence. Thank you for the work that you do for us. Greatly appreciate it, and good luck to you going forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other comments or questions by committee members?
No, Mr. Chair.
No, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a motion to recommend approval?
Motion to recommend approval.
By Vice Chair, second by Councilman Castillo. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Crossan, thank you very much for participating. And also thank you for your past services, and we look forward to continuing good services in the future. The CIP is near and dear to the city council. It has a whole host of neighborhood projects to the whole process, and it was through a collaborative effort with the executive branch putting forth that document. But it was imperative that each council member, at least at the time, who was willing to participate, had a chance to participate and advocate for their neighborhood's concerns and needs, since the council makes the final decision whether or not to borrow the money or not. So we appreciate that. We look forward to a positive stewardship of that money and also the appropriate accounting on the expenses of it. Thank you, Mr. Croissant, and be well and be safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, item number 7, please.
Communication from the final mayor dated September 17, 2020, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to Section 302B and 1009 of the Providence Homeless Charter of 1980 as amended, he is to state reappointing Vincent Kilbridge of 88 Lorimer Avenue, Providence, Rhode Island, 02906, as a member of the Providence Public Building Authority for a term to expire on January 31st, 2025, and respectfully submit the same for your review.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Could you please swear in the witness, please?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record, sir.
Vincent Kilbridge.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kilbridge. Welcome, Mr. Kilbridge, and I stand corrected. It was a reappointment for Mr. Croissant. There's also a reappointment for you, sir. So
Yes,
could you give us a little background on yourself, what you achieved while you've been on the Providence Public Building Authority, and why you want to get reappointed?
Thank you,
Grab the mic.
Mr. Chairman. I have been a resident of the city of Providence for 25 years. I have been involved in civic activities. Professionally, I work for Washington Trust Bank. I've been with them for 5 years. I do wealth management. I've been in that business for 25 years or so with Fleet Bank, Bank of America, Citizens Bank. I also, about 3 years, was involved in a not-for-profit organization. There's not a whole lot I can add to Mr. Crosson's presentation on the duties and the activities of the Providence Public Building Authority, but it does give us a great amount of confidence that we are overseeing the spending of the taxpayers' money, that we are keeping an eye on it. And it also is kind of, it's very rewarding when I'm walking around the city or driving the city or riding my bike and seeing the projects. India Point Park, the work there, or the road work that's being done throughout the city. It's really very nice that I have a little bit of input on those projects. So it's a good bit of a civic pride there as well. But again, Ron really hit all the points on what the committee is doing. We have a very strong committee. We're very close, and it's really been progressing very well.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Kilbridge. Any comments or concerns or questions by committee members? Vice Chair Ryan.
Just that, thank you very much for your service to the city of Providence. I'm very impressed with your resume. I can't think of anyone else I'd rather have looking at our CIP dollars than a fiduciary officer. So you certainly have a tremendous background. We're fortunate to have you be interested in helping the city of Providence. So thank you for being here for so long. Thank you for making a commitment to Providence, and thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you. It's a good mix of technical and financial.
Sure is. Very impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other comments or questions by committee members?
Motion to recommend approval.
Motion recommended approved by Vice Chair, second by Councilor Castillo. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Kilbridge. Thank you for your past service and your future service. As I mentioned before, the CIP in particular is very important to the City Council. Our projects for our neighborhoods, sometimes some people devalue a council member's requests, but actually the council and the legislative branch of government is a co-equal branch of government. And without it, taxes aren't levied, people don't get paid, and jobs aren't created. It's not this is a republic, and I remind everybody because unfortunately during these COVID-19 times, we seem to be slipping into almost sometimes as a anti-republic way about things in government lately, where the legislative branch of government is becoming less and less valued and it's becoming a one-sided conversation. Our job is to promote checks and balances and to make sure the taxpayers' dollars are spent wisely and efficiently. We look towards you and your stewardship to do that and to help us with that execution of that obligation. So thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next item, please. Item number 8, please.
Communication from His Honor the Mayor dated September 21st, 2020, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to Section 302B and 1009 of the Providence Home Charter of 1980, and amended here to say the appointment of James Mclaughlin of 150 Dexter Road, Providence, Rhode Island, 2906, as a member of the Providence Public Building Authority for a term to expire on January 31st, 2025, and respectfully submit the same for your approval.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please swear in the witness, please?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to counsel and perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record, sir.
James Mclaughlin.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. McLaughlin. Thank you for participating this evening. Could you once again tell us a little bit about yourself? Looks like you want to get reappointed also. Tell us what you achieved and what you want to try to achieve in the near future. Sir, you have the mic.
My name is James Mclaughlin. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of Rhode Island. I went to undergraduate at Iowa State University. I have my master's degree from the University of Virginia. I own a small engineering firm here in the state of Rhode Island. I've sat on the Public Building Authority for the last 5 years and offered my engineering technical expertise to the board. I have decided to request reappointment because I'm very excited about the CIP and the direction that the CIP is going, and I wanted to be a part of that on behalf of the city.
Right.
Thank you, sir. Any comments or questions by committee members? Vice Chair Ryan.
Just another extremely impressive resume. Thank you very much for your service to the city and your interest in a reappointment. We're really excited about the CIP too, and it's nice to see all of the folks tonight that are currently on that board doing fine work and making a commitment to serving Providence. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. And Madam Vice Chair, any other comments or questions by committee members? That said, do we have a motion?
Motion to recommend approval, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair makes that motion. Second by Councilman Castillo. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you once again, Mr. McLaughlin. Thank you for participating, and be well. And once again, we look forward to your expertise and stewardship on the CIP money, and also to advocate for the council projects as well as the administration projects. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, last item on the docket, item number 9, please.
Discussion relative to the budget regarding public safety. The following has been invited: Colonel Hugh T. Clemens, Commissioner Stephen M. Parry, and Margaret McDuff, Chief Executive Director of Family Services of Rhode Island.
All right, thank you. I think we have the Commissioner Parry, Colonel Clemens, and I think Margaret McDuff. So why don't we swear all those 3 individuals in, and then we can go from there.
Would you all please raise your right hand? Do you swear to penalty and perjury that the testimony that you give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you for the record.
I want to start with the Commissioner. Commissioner, please state your name.
Stephen Parry, Commissioner of Public Safety.
Colonel?
Hugh Clements, Chief with the Providence Police.
Thank you. Ms. McDuff?
Margaret McDuff, CEO of Family Service of Rhode Island.
Thank you. So first I want to thank all 3 of you for attending this evening's finance meeting. This is a continuing conversation. Actually, we started many months ago, but we always continue, in which the Finance Committee, working with the Providence Police and of course the Commissioner's Office, some of the things we learned about, and I think it's very important. We talked about some of the ups and downs of the police department, and of course, and some of the stuff that's occurring in our great city. But also we learned in the last few months in particular, we learned about different social service agencies which have been working hand in hand with the City of Providence Police Department over some past 20 plus years, in which have been providing services that most of my colleagues, especially the freshmen, didn't even know existed. And it was important for us to help enlighten them to understand there's a lot more going on versus a constant discounting of the city and all the good work that's happened in the past 20 years. One thing for my position is, of course, is that I always get a little concerned when I hear new colleagues or other folks that just devalue all the positive work that is happening, that we have, and all the positive strides we've done in the past 2 decades. And just totally hat out of hand, just discount all the hard work the men and women from all different walks of life have done to make this city the best it can. Nothing's perfect, we all know that. We all agree that we always want to strive to make it better. We always want to make our police department a better place for our officers to serve, our community to welcome, and of course our social services to interact and help us with the unfortunately some of the serious problems our constituents face on a daily basis. So I want to just remind everybody where we are, because it's important. So one of the things that we've been talking about in particular is, of course, this idea, as far as my position is, I remember, is that one of the first things I did way back when was actually increase the Providence Police Department up to almost 498 at one time. It was one of my first things as a freshman councilman. I was able to achieve it by working with, I wasn't even in the leadership. I worked with other council members across the aisle who didn't even see eye to eye with me, worked with the administration, and we achieved the goal together. We might not have thought everything politically was correct, but there was one thing that everybody coalesced, which was to have a strong, informed, educated, positive police department that was reflecting our constituency. And back then, it took a lot of work, but a freshman councilman was able to do that versus a constant, always devaluing what those council members who were there before me, saying they didn't do anything. So I took it and I viewed it in a different way. How to get positive change by embracing a lot of good things that council at that time that I just came on was doing. And we worked together and did that. Unfortunately now, 20 plus years, we're at, what's the number of police officers we have now? We're down to, is it 400 or below, Chief, Colonel?
No, we're at 419 today.
419. And over the years, we've done things to help the police department, new uniforms, cameras, which was a major stride, a major positive effort, helping work, supporting these social service programs to further embed themselves into the Providence Police Department for positive reform, and to help the police department, the police officers out on the beat. And so this evening I want to get to a point where most of my colleagues that I've spoken to, one of the major issues that are occurring is that we realize that we have a police force that is aging. We have a police force that has the potential to be, a big group is going to be retiring soon, and that we don't have an academy, we don't have any reserves, and we don't have anybody to replace these individuals. Early on in my career, once again, unfortunately, we used to have actually not only to have a police academy going, we also had some reserves going on too. We had like this the double layer in order so we could always backfill these positions. So this evening we want to talk about and to do a little more conversation about, in particular, the police academy, where it is, what's the status of it. There's been question of whether or not it's funded or not funded, and I got the internal on the treasurer and Mr. Almonte, who will help disabuse everybody of that notion. Also, we want to talk about how we can we heard some great, the great strides that Family Services has done to date and the achievements they've been able to do with their GO team, and talk about how maybe we can help increase their funding. And by the way, yes, we have financial issues. Yes, there are serious issues facing the city and the state and the country. But we can't shirk our responsibility by letting our society or our city de-evolve into a lawless place, or a place where you can't get the help from our social services. So this is where we have to make This is where you have to make serious decisions. I mentioned, I talked to all my, especially my new colleagues when they would come on, and I go like, it's always easy to vote yes on the easy ones. Well, the easy decisions are the easy ones. This is when the rubber hits the road, in which now you have to start making, this is the serious decisions, where we have to make critical decisions in order to promote a positive good for our constituency. So this evening, we want to get a better understanding of the academy, what are the roadblocks, and we go through that process. And then I want to talk, of course, Ms. McDuff, and find out where the funding is right now with them, and then what additional funding they would need in order to expand their program. Now, I understand some of my council colleagues may not want to. Maybe they don't want to expand it in their ward, and I respect that. I, for one, would like to expand in my ward. And my council colleagues who don't want to expand their ward, that's fine. We can make sure the funding is appropriately divided if they really want to be that provincial. But I'm willing to approach it in a cosmopolitan approach in order to be holistic and approach it to the entire city. So with that, I would like to start with maybe, do we want to have the commission tell us what the status of the academy is right now, where we are, and the colonel can weigh in and tell us any roadblocks or things in which this committee, at least I know a good majority of my council colleagues would like to do to put our shoulder into it to help address your problems, whether it's funding or location, in order to get an academy up and running and moving forward to protect our city. And then, of course, to see what we can do for the family service. Commissioner, you have the mic, sir, and can you give us a status, sir?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. So we began this process when I say began, it takes us probably ideally 3 months to recruit. That means getting out into the community and getting a pool of candidates that are diverse. We've done that. The next step in our process is to run a physical agility, make sure people are fit enough to proceed. We've done that. We probably started out with about 1,100 applicants that applied. And then as the process, we'll lose some. They won't come to the agility for varying reasons. Most will pay $50 for the process. And then there will be some that don't pass the physical agility in that first phase. And the second phase is a written examination in which those who continue in the process will take the written examination. That has been completed as well. We're down, and the colonel may have more accurate information or numbers, but we're down to about 350 candidates at this phase. And the next phase is setting up an oral interview. That oral interview is structured based on the company that does our written examination. So the questions are really developed and based on the knowledge that these young men and women have or may not have about what's required in this profession. There are community members that sit on these panels. It's police officers in Providence at varying ranks, and there are community members that sit on these panels. And it's a big commitment for those who are volunteering, because there are 2 or 3 for each candidate, and everyone's asked the same question. And then there's training. They're looking for, the answers that are most appropriate to the question. So it's just not random. Everyone is asked the same question. Everyone is trained to rate the answers. Once that phase is done, and those who pass then move on to the next phase, which consists of the background check. Depending on the number of candidates that we have coming out of the oral interview, we typically will background 200, which is a heavy load. We do all the background investigations internally. So our detectives, for the most part, and other people that are police officers that are trained, provide that service and do a complete background. That's probably the most critical phase of selecting candidates to become recruits in our training academy. After that background and a selection is made, depending on the level of funding that this council has approved, whether that's 50, 40, or 60, or some other number, we will select candidates from that background. And then from there, a conditional offer of employment is offered to those candidates. And typically, I'll use for an example, if there are 50 candidates or 50 recruits that we're wishing to hire, we'll give 50 offers of employment and then another 10 or 15 to alternates. So if some either drop out or fail the medical physical or the psychological exam, then we'll have those alternates that are in queue. The alternates are not guaranteed a position in the academy, but it's a backfill for the process. And then from there, once they pass the psych test and the medical physical, then the academy begins. That academy runs about 6 months long. And we are looking presently at the old water supply building on Academy Avenue to build out at least temporarily for this police academy to host the Providence Police Recruit Academy. And doing the math, and it's kind of hard because it all depends on the numbers and how quick we can do this. But we're looking at the spring, March, April, the spring, if we fast track this as much as we can fast track it. But I'll tell you, the delay is always will be in the background because we do a deep dive in every young man and woman to see what their background is about so we can select the very best.
Thank you. Commissioner, can you just tell me, Commissioner, when are you guys going to set up the oral interviews? When is that happening?
That's underway. They're developing them. I don't know if there's been dates already set up and notice, but that's our next phase.
I have some more questions, but Vice Chair Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, thank you for walking us through that timeline. When did this process begin?
Boy, it's been probably 8 months ago.
So why is it taking so long?
Well, we had to do a recruiting, and the recruiting is usually based on the number of applicants. And then once we get a number, we then begin the next phase. So it's taken so long because we're probably receiving maybe 60% of the applicant pool that we normally receive. So we'll get 2,000, 2,500 applicants. Typically, years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Now we're looking at, right now, there's 1,100 to 1,200 that applied. So the key, in my view, in seeing academies, both from the state and now with the Providence Police, is you really got to recruit and you really need to get a good diverse pool of candidates. And we tried to do that and we came up with 1,100.
So you had 1,100 candidates last November, last fall. Is that correct?
I'll have to do the math rolling back.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
So basically, we've been trying to get this academy rolling since last November, approximately. We've had about 1,100 applicants, and now what's left in that pool, all these months later, is how many? 350, or is it 200?
No, it's about 300.
300. Okay.
Right now.
But you would fair to say it's an unusually long period of time that this academy is taking to get up and running?
That's fair.
Okay. And just one other comment relative to your testimony. I understand you stated that you're looking at the Water Supply Board, which happens to be in the 5th Ward. I remember discussions many months ago wherein that facility was rejected. So has there been a change in plans on that, or why is that all of a sudden now back under consideration?
Well, we tried to find a permanent site and we went out to RFP a few times, and we were not able to get suitable bidders to build out a suitable site. So that's taking quite some time. I know you and I had a discussion about Academy Avenue, and it wasn't feasible at that time. Now we have no other place, and it's a city-owned property, and it can at least accommodate this training academy. Otherwise, it'd probably be delayed because we won't be able to find a site, build that site out, or build a building for our academy.
So, okay, so I remember the discussions, the evaluation of the water board. So I really don't understand why it's now acceptable. But I do recall as well that we talked about other school facilities, school buildings, rec centers, other academic settings. We talked about the Pima building. We also spoke about there's a classroom, a need for classroom space, and as well as a need for, maybe tactical training space. So have you looked at the number of school buildings that might be available now and the possibility of using the Pima building to get the school started right away? Because I hate to see the delay of the academy be as a result of the fact that we can't find a building to have the school in.
Councilwoman, we have explored every single possibility, including what you just cited and beyond. We will occupy whatever space for 6 months and cohabitating with another entity, whether it's school or some private entity, or even, we looked at different institutions of higher education to see if we could co-locate, and nothing is suitable for the purpose of running this police academy. We need that space, and we need a certain footprint in that space for not only classroom, but physical, training and some other components. So yes, we did. Pima is not suitable. Pima is not large enough, and Pima is, even if it were, if we went into some emergency in this city, we rely on Pima to stand up the EOC, the Emergency Management Center, and by taking that over would impact our ability to respond to emergencies.
Is it fair to say then, Commissioner, that the delay in this class at this point is that you don't have a classroom? You don't have a facility to hold the class in? Is that what's going on?
No, that's not what's going on. I need a space to train, but we couldn't, we couldn't. I don't know today what the funding will be in the budget. So we got to get an authorized budget before we can begin the process of both training and hiring police officers.
Okay, I'm sure that we'll get to the budget issues today. I don't think that's holding it up. But I do want to say that for the record, the water board building, is empty, the old water board building. And it was ruled out before. Again, I didn't understand why it was ruled out. But it is open, empty. We have funds. So I continue to say we need to move forward as quickly as we can with the academy, given the size of the ranks of the police department. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councilman Taylor.
Commissioner, a couple questions. When was the last school that graduated? What year was that? And how many graduated?
I want to say 60 and probably 2.5 years ago, but that's my recall. Elaine is on, so if you'd swear Elaine in. The colonel's having difficulty with the technology, so he'll know off the top of his head, but Elaine can certainly give us those numbers, if you don't mind.
Commissioner, is the chief coming back on? Is that what you said?
he texted me and said he's having technical difficulties, so he's trying to get back on, yes.
If he can't come on the Zoom, maybe he can at least call in, I think. Madam Clerk, could you forward that stuff, or?
I don't, Sean has the credentials, I don't,
All right, is it Sean, one second, Sean here, still present?
I can text.
So we'll see, we'll send them back the stuff. Worst case scenario, he can call on the speakerphone. While we're doing that, could you swear in Ms. Richards, please?
Please raise your right hand to swear the penalty of perjury that the testimony you have about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You state your name for the record.
Elaine Richards, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, and welcome, Ms. Richards. Could you help us, enlighten us on that question? When was the last academy, and how many officers were graduated?
They were sworn in August of, I want to say, 2018. If you bear with me one second. Yes, August of
17.
17.
Yep. And how many were sworn in?
You bear with me, I'm going to have to get that figure for you. I'm sorry, it was the class of 2019 was the last class. 45.
And how many officers retired from then to now, do you know?
Yes. In 2019.
And to the present, of course.
If the clerk can unmute the colonel, he says he had to join by phone.
Right.
Thank you.
Do you know do you know which phone number it is? Is it ending, we got 456 and 907. It's the last three digits. No, don't do it yet.
907.
All right, great. Allow to talk. Nope, one up, allow to talk, and then rename. Colonel, are you with us, Colonel?
19.
Mr. Chairman, do you have me?
Yes, now we do. Okay. Right. All right. So, Councilman Taylor, do you have a follow-up question, sir?
Yes, I have a couple. You asked one of them.
And then we have the vice chair, Councilman Taylor.
Okay. So I know that, when we first started a couple of years ago, when I first started as councilman, I know, Chairman, you mentioned that we should be every year putting a school on. And if we would have done that, we would have had a school on this year. So actually we're skipping this year. We actually skipped 2 years from 17 to 19 and then now another year. Instead of having a big class of say 40 to 60, are we looking into in the future a smaller classes of say 25? Is that something that is on the radar?
Commissioner and Colonel, is that something that you guys could put together, do like a smaller academies? It's just this way you can have them, every year? Commissioner and Colonel?
So, Mr. Chairman, fellow council members, attendees, thanks for having me. Sorry for that minor technical. But yes, it is going forward, not for this particular school. We're critically short. We need a large school this time, obviously. Going forward, it's possible, but it has to be a strategic 10-year plan at least to coordinate that type of activity. We've tried that in the past. We haven't been that successful in that. Most academies are driven by the finances of the city. So that's the real indicator and the challenge.
But if we let's say you have, I thought it was 350 people. I'm not sure. But I heard so many numbers. So I'm just saying 350 people, and you're only going to hire. What are we hiring?
What are we hiring? So right, we started the process, Councilman Taylor. We started with 989 candidates. We had the physical agility test and then the written, and along with those who decided not to opt into this profession, we are down to 193, of which we're hoping to pick, and they're all solid candidates, so that's a pretty good number. It's consistent with previous recruitment drives or close to it. We're certainly hoping to get an academy of 50.
Okay, so if we do 50, and let's say it starts next year, would you keep the 143 on a list like other police and fire departments do, let's say for a year or two, and then do another school if money and everything, if the stars and everything line are right, then we could do another school the following year of either 25 or 50 or whatever, but we got 143 candidates. Would you consider using those 143 candidates and not having to go out and do a whole nother testing and BCI check and interview and everything? Is that a consideration?
Potentially this time, maybe not, but potentially depending on the quality of candidates. But going forward, that could be a plan in that if we have an initial recruitment of 1,000 candidates and we knew that we were going to pick 200 in total, then we could do 25 candidates at a session. Yes, I mean it potentially, to answer your question, this time around with 143 left over, if we have enough qualified candidates, there's a possibility.
Okay, and also the class. Okay, the location of the school. I guess I got to throw some things out because I'm confused. I don't even know if they put in for it, but did Stop and Shop, did Paolino put in? Because I heard rumors that they were trying to put in the police and fire academy there. Is that still in the works, not in the works? You never put an RFP. What happened there?
So I'll try to take this. I'll try. So the first RFP, he did reply to the RFP, and we had a meeting with all the bidders, and that bidder was the only one that came, and we discussed, public properties led this, discussed what our goal was, and that bidder said it's impossible for me to financially meet that goal and what we have to put into the project. So we withdrew that bid because we had no bidders. And so, yeah, we did look at all those properties and we didn't get any suitable bidders based on the structure.
Okay. And also, have you considered, instead of the water supply building, have you considered two options, I guess? One, because it's a school of 50 and it's not any bigger than some of the past fire schools, to either A, have it at the Reservoir Avenue station and move engine 11 to Broad Street. That's one option. Or option two is to have it at the closed engine 4 station at Reservoir Avenue.
I don't know that anyone's given that consideration. I can tell you that although we run fire academies from Reservoir, as you know, it's not conducive to training in a lot of ways. So I would respectfully respond that Reservoir Avenue training facility would not be suitable for the Providence Police Training Academy.
And why? In other words, classwork, obviously they could do classwork there, but what do they do? I mean, they run, like the firemen run around the neighborhood. They have the drill tower, which they're doing drills. I mean, what what wouldn't the police be able to do that the fire do?
The conditions in the second floor classroom are just so tight, and it's really not suitable for the fire department either. But the police department does much more classroom than the fire department, and pushing 50 into that small classroom space on that second floor is just not conducive to that kind of training.
Well, as someone who graduated from a fire school of 78, I think there's plenty of room, but that's beside the point. But throwing a monkey wrench into it, how does COVID work into classroom training?
Yeah, so I mean, COVID has put a delay in our physical agility. Yes, we couldn't have more than whatever the number was back then, 5 or 8. And so we had to wait a while, whether it was a couple months or a month, I don't recall, but it was delayed. And so, yeah, we looked at that also with COVID and training. And we looked at the Municipal Academy has run one, and they have another one running, the Police Academy, Municipal Police Academy. And they're figuring it out and doing, either virtual with instructors, because the instructors are mostly volunteer that put on these presentations for the police academies, and they didn't want to come in, and for the Municipal Academy anyway. And so we're going to be faced with the same challenge. So we got to make accommodations, just like our students have made in this virtual learning. Although the police recruits can't be at home doing this, they have to be in a space, and we're going to have to work our way through, the COVID conditions and all the restrictions.
Because I'm thinking with COVID, I'm not sure if any place is big enough with 50 people.
Well,
I mean, places we've talked about.
Yeah, I agree. It's a challenge. So how we split that up and do the classroom and out of classroom, we're going to have to get creative with this academy.
Is it possible to do like a 25 8-hour morning and a 25 nighttime, or we don't know?
Anything's possible, Councilman. The only driver is availability for the outside presenters.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Taylor. Vice Chair Ryan?
Thank you. I want to get off the topic of the actual location of the class, because I trust that the commissioner is able to identify a location that will work. I am concerned about the ranks, the size of the ranks, and I think that the colonel stated the number right now is 419. Is that including those that might be off injured or sick? Is that the people is that the uniformed officers on duty?
That's the FTE council.
So
Go ahead, Colonel.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the total complement of the Providence Police workforce, including those that we have out injured on duty, which is a small number. We're inside of a dozen that are injured on duty right now and who may be out long-term sick. It's a pretty small number, but that's the total who are sworn getting paid by the city on the Providence Police, 419.
So we're real close to 400 is the point that I'm trying to make. And really, we would be fully staffed if we were at 500, would you say? Is 500 the number that we try to achieve or retain or keep, or what is the number that we considered efficient staffing? Colonel.
Well, certainly, in between 450 and 500 is a real strong operational number. The closer we get to 500, the closer we get to policing in the style that we know that we're most effective at. Yeah.
Okay, so that's our goal. How many officers, and I don't know who to ask, but how many officers have opted for retirement since we had our last class in 17? So let's just say how many retired in 18 and how many retired in 19? Do you have that number?
Elaine, did you have that number or?
And then how many are going off in 2020? If we know. Have we ever gotten that?
I don't know if
So I don't have the actual numbers, but I can tell you the last 2 years, this year, 2020, last year, 2019, are consistent with in between a dozen and 20 that we lose per year. It's hard to predict who's going to go next year, especially in this present anti-policing climate. Certainly a lot of people are talking like they will, but even this year, our numbers were less than I expected. So
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So if you're just, knowing what we know, I just heard a testimony that the commissioner anticipated this class not to get going until March. With that knowledge, how many police officers are we going to have? Just forecast for me what you think we will have by the time the next class that we're talking about gets through.
I would say we'd be close to 390 by the time this school graduates, and plus 50 would give us 440.
Okay, so this class that we're talking about is very, very critical to achieving a reasonable level of staffing, correct? Fair to say?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So I guess I'm concerned, and I want to go back to the question that I asked when I started this of the commissioner. We started this class. We started a recruitment drive last fall, as I recall. It was a priority for the council. We recognized these. We did this math. I've done this math over and over and over again. We went out. We did a recruitment drive, and the recruitment drive, according to my notes, concluded December 31st of 2019. So from that date till present, what have we been doing? And, you originally said 1,100. I heard the colonel talk about 989. We're down to 143, or is it 193 that are trying to get on the force right now? Is it 193 or 143?
193.
193. Okay. So since December, fair to say, we've been waiting to put this class on, correct?
No, we extended it from December to the end of January.
Okay, who makes the decision to move forward? Is that the commissioner or is that the mayor's decision? Or is it your decision, Colonel?
We make it in tandem, myself and the commissioner.
Okay. So I guess then the next questions are relative to money for these classes. Do we have the money to fund this? Mr. Chair, I yield to your back to your seat for that, or we can ask the auditor if she's reviewed the finances of the police department and what are they and can we afford this class?
Thank you. So I just want to make sure we clarify the issues. First of all, just one other question. How many officers presently are eligible to retire? Ms. Richards, do you have that number?
I do. There are 113.
100 and what?
Wow.
113.
So 113 are eligible to retire. That's the number you have to be focusing on, because that's a big number. So 50, or that's a big chunk of your workforce. So what we have right now, about 419, you have about 12 on IOD, and you get 113 eligible to retire. All right, again, I want to get the numbers correct. We have 193 that have now been synthesized down into a group, and the two issues we're standing that I've heard is one, of course, we're going to set up oral interviews to the company, and then you're concerned about a budget. So let's do one thing at a time. The budget seems to be this this ping pong thing. So let's try to address it now. So Internal Order, I guess, Internal Order, can we address that about the budget issue that the commissioner brought up? His concern is that money or whatever, that, now, it sounds like he's worried about if this money's gonna be there for next March or next year, which, by the way, of course, like anything else, you'll have, you know, the budget ebbing and flowing. So first of all, do we have money now? And do you see a problem for us to have money tomorrow, Madam Clerk, Madam Auditor?
Yes. Based on last year's budget, using last year's numbers, I do see a way that this academy can be run. For example, I will use the biggest expense, salaries. Fiscal year 20 budget for salaries was 33.6 million. They only spent 32.6. They're only asking for $800,000. Now, they can still pay all of their employees and still have an academy and still have a surplus. And that's not counting any that have fallen off or through attrition. So that number may be even larger. So the salaries are definitely there.
So the 800,000, that salary wouldn't need to be available until when, Madam Auditor? You don't need it now, right? When would you need the money?
It's available now.
It's available
No, I
now.
know-
It's available
When
now.
it's available, I know once available now, but when would they actually have to draw down on it?
Well, according to the notes from the finance, they were doing 20 weeks in fiscal year 21, and they were asking for 800,000. So,
Okay,
February?
so the answer is, Commissioner, the budget is there, you have the money, and the council has already appropriated it. And you have more than enough lead time to keep moving forward. So the argument or the question mark that there's not money or the budget isn't there is not is basically, we have, as a Superior Court judge said to me and my colleagues, we have disabused you of that notion. The money's there. It can no longer be a question that, or use it as a reason why not to proceed. Commissioner, do you acknowledge that the money's there now, sir? Or do you have any further questions on that particular issue?
No, I do not.
Thank you. I just want to, because I want to make sure, because that was one of you stated on the record earlier that budget was a problem. So now budget is not a problem. So next step is I still want to get to what is the turnaround to get this company, which now, by the way, as you mentioned, to set up oral interviews. And by the way, in the age of Zoom and stuff, I cannot imagine if this company has been using for so long, what's taking so long for that? What's the true time frame to get that process going? So the company must be saying, Commissioner, Colonel, we're going to be available. We're going to be able to stop. Or have you guys not begun those discussions? So it's either you haven't begun discussions and they haven't given you an answer, or you have begun discussions and they have given you an answer. So can you help us out? Can you enlighten us, sir?
Sure. So I think the Colonel was either muted or having technical difficulties. I don't know. And Colonel, I don't know if you have, whether or not dates have been set up for oral interviews, or we're in the process of doing that. Oral interviewing 200 takes time. I don't know if that's 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a week. I'm not in the weeds of that projection, but if you do the math, it takes several weeks to get through 200 or 197. Do you know the status of where we are in that next step?
Yes, I do. So we just finished the written portion of the examination into the entry into the academy on September 19th and 20th. We conducted it. And again, COVID set us pretty far back. And we administered the testing under COVID guidelines on September 19th and 20th at CCRI. They were the only institution that were willing to afford us the necessary space that we needed. So late September, we knew we could move forward with notifying the company. They've begun as of early October. We're in the process of notifying, we're trying to make available our community representatives who serve on the panel, the oral examination panels for the incoming candidates to the academy. So we're close. The company's been good. We're moving along. this week, we're notifying the candidates of prospective dates for them to come before the panel and interview orally for the Providence Police Department.
Thank you. Colonel, just a couple of things. Knowing that sounds like some of this stuff that we're going through is COVID-19 fund, that COVID-19 funding, it'll be available for us to do these things. So I know, Commissioner, your office is dealing with the COVID-19 funding, correct, sir?
Yeah, we're a part of it, but we're not leading it for the city. But on the public safety side, yes, of course.
So it seems to me that this process would be eligible for COVID-19 funding, which could also help us with you know, fixing out or putting out those classrooms. So can you find? I'd like to get that confirmed if you could. You know, that's the first thing. Second thing is knowing that the other colleges in the downtown area have pretty much closed up, right, during this time where they've done distance learning. And if we could then use our COVID-19, maybe we can still rent space, which are enough classrooms there where we can have those potential candidates spaced out correctly. So, I mean, when it comes to classroom space, I think you have an opportunity to actually utilize to help with that classroom issue. So I think that's something, because you mentioned about that. So right now, the budget's clear, you folks have the money. You're saying at this time the company's beginning to set up the oral interviews, is that correct, Colonel and Commissioner, is that right?
That is correct.
Right? And then after that would be the background check. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So do you do the background check after you do the oral interviews? Do you end up after the oral interviews, what happens? You make the pool smaller? Is that what happens?
Could be, depending on the results.
Okay, so that's why that's why the next step is background, correct? Because you're not going to do the background on 193, that's the next step. Okay, great.
All right.
So have you folks put together an actual timeline to give us timeline of, now the next step is, like you mentioned, the oral, and then if something's going to be a couple of weeks, so be it, and then that's the next level after that. I think it'd be very beneficial if you could get that put together. I presume you must have something like that.
Yep, we can and we do.
All right. So if we could do that, I think it'd be very helpful. All right. Internal Auditor, what I would ask of you is that if the Commissioner and the Colonel has any questions about the budget and financing for this academy, help them get the information so they have the guidance, the financial guidance that it exists, and that they can continue to proceed. So I'd ask you to continue with that. And if you have to put in writing and continue, and then I would ask the Commissioner and the Colonel, if you are receiving from our co-equal branch of government any resistance from trying to implement an academy, I think it behooves you, especially you, Commissioner, since you are the civilian authority of the paramilitary operations, and you actually report both branches of government. You have a fiduciary obligation to let this council and this body know that if you're receiving a resistance from the other branch of government to prevent the movement of an academy, you have a fiduciary obligation to inform this committee, this council, of that. Now, not all council colleagues will, of course, want an academy. I understand it. Some of my council colleagues are very vocal about the funding and abolishing the police department. That'll be their issue, but the council colleagues that I've been working with, at least in my neck of the woods, I can tell you, I represent a minority-majority ward. I don't represent the top 2% wealthy people in the state of Rhode Island. My community meetings, my constituents keep on saying, we need more community policing. We need, of course, we believe in reform, making the police better, but they have said just the opposite. So my minority-majority community has said, we would like to have more policing, we'd like to have more community policing, we'd like to have better reform in the policing, and we'd see them walking the beats again, walking our streets again, and being interactive with our constituents. So I want you to know, at least from my neck of the woods, which is on the other side of the track, it's not on the wealthy side of the track, it's on, unfortunately, the track that people have the greater needs. In my community meetings, I asked them the first question, do you want me to support the funding of the police station They say no. If you want to abolish police, they say no. In fact, they say, John, we need more police for quality of life issues. We need more police walking the beat. We have traffic issues. We have B&Es. So I want you to know, at least from my neck of the woods, and I know you probably don't hear it enough. I know we had a big public hearing, it had 200 plus people, but they came from, I hate to say it, the wealthiest part of the city. And I understand that they don't want police and they want to abolish it, and I respect the wealthy part of the city's request to do that. But for my part of the city, they're not looking to do that. And I'm gonna be emphatic about that, because they look for the police, and by the way, a lot of the police officers on the job now came from my neighborhood. A lot of those minority officers came from my neighborhood, my side of the tracks, and they've been great officers, doing great jobs. So, and I appreciate, by the way, that you've been working on diversifying the police department, making it more reflective, let's be honest, of our city, our great city. So, and there's been a lot of great strides. So I'm going to keep on emphasizing that, because I don't think the colonel and the commissioner hears enough of that. And I'm going to keep saying it. And I heard it for 10 hours, and I was actually kind of surprised. That's right. So I also want to make a note, by the way, before I have everybody's attention, it's my turn, is that I want to also, we have Vice Chair, then Councilman Taylor, then Councilman Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So now that we've found money in the budget, can I just ask for a clarification on the timeline? And I heard you ask the commissioner to work with our auditor should they have any concerns or questions on the budget dollars. But for me, I don't understand why we're talking about the spring. We already, we spoke about, we had testimony that the class, the recruitment started in November, it was over in December, here we are in October, and we've had a number of people step forward and choose to be involved in the process. I'm sure we've lost a lot of those folks over the many months, but nonetheless, why are we waiting and have you changed that date based on our conversation tonight? Commissioner, could you answer that, please?
Sure. So look, that's what we're hopeful for in March. So here we are in mid or late October. So it's going to take a month to do the interviews. I can just do the math in my head and asking community members to devote, that kind of time, but leaving that aside, trying to fast track. And so we're looking at November for the oral interviews. I've gone through probably a dozen police academies, and I can sit here and say, we'll do a background in 8 weeks, but we're depending on those investigators that investigate crime in this city, our detective bureau, to do those backgrounds and so depending on how many we lose, 193, say we're down to 150, to do 150 backgrounds. If we can devote the time from the Dix and we don't have what we've seen in the past 6 months, we can probably do it in 8 weeks. But in what, it's probably probable that we're looking at 3 months, 12 weeks to do a thorough background. That is the most critical piece in selecting young men and women for this academy. So
that gets us to January. So now we're in January.
No, it doesn't. So we have November, and then December, January, February. End of February is a backgrounds. And then you're looking at a psych test, and you're looking at a medical physical. So, can we do that in a month? It'll be a heavy lift because we're relying on the doctor, the medical doctor, to do 150, I'm going to just use a number, of medical physicals. And the psych test is, the psychologist goes through them, and we're the biggest and we're the heaviest lift for who we use right now. And so doing, that number as well, there's no way she's going to do it in 2 weeks, probably more than like a month to do the psych test. Can we do it in tandem, yeah, of course, the medical, physical, and the psych tests we can do, because they're different entities. So that's why I'm doing the math. And I'd love to say, look, I wanted to start in January, get them on the street in July, but that's just not realistic. So when I say March, I think that's doing our very best in getting to a class of 60, 50, 10 alternates and 50 recruits in that process and beginning in March. I'm open. Look, if I'm missing something, Elaine has managed this with me, and the Colonel certainly has managed academies as well. If I'm missing the math, then I stand corrected, but that's how I see it. Colonel?
And Elaine or the Colonel or even our auditor opine on that timeline?
Yeah, I'd like to opine, Councilwoman. So
Thank you.
We've done this for many years. In a very aggressive format right now, March would be the earliest. Consistently over the years, it takes well over a year and a quarter from gate to wire to recruit for an academy and have them sitting in the academy. It's just a long process, and yet there's so many things to pull together, including, the background investigations, the psychs. It's a cumbersome process, and that's why it does make sense what Councilman Taylor said is to having a schedule, a strategic schedule year after year with putting a specified number in each academy. But you have to remember, it's all driven off the finances. We've been put on hold several times and gone years without an academy. I've been the chief for 9 years, and we've had 3, 2014, 17, and 19. By design, would it help to have an academy every year or so of a small number? Optimally, that's the way to go. But, we have to plan that ahead in a 10-year strategy.
And I appreciate that, Colonel. I agree with you and I think that at this table, we've had a number of discussions about recognizing, as the chairman started the conversation, we have an aging police department. We're losing police officers in retirement. The numbers are going down faster than we're able to build it up. So it should be a priority. I'm just disappointed in the fact, and I'm going to say it again, that we started this discussion about having this academy in November of 2019, and we've essentially gone through this entire year without making any progress or limited progress to that end. And it's disappointing because when March rolls around, we're going to have even less officers, and that's disappointing. It's contrary to our goals and our intentions. We've had numerous discussions about facilities, locations, and here we are now talking about getting these new police officers on our streets next spring. So a little disappointed there, and I want to be forthright, and I think it behooves us to move forward as quickly as we can.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I just want to follow up on one question. Now, Mr. Mancini, are you there, sir? Or Sarah, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mancini, the internal auditor has testified and relayed the financial situation concerning the budget of the academy. Can Ms. Silvera and Mr. Mancini, can you either corroborate or not that presentation that the money is there and the funding will be available, actually available now, and will be available coming March?
Mr. Chairman, while we have gone through a number of scenarios that we thought we would save money on when we do get to a budget appropriation, the one that we held off at the very last would be the police academy. We did not yet factor that in as a cost savings to the budget. So I would presume with the confirmation of Ms. Silveira that we can confirm that that is still considered part of the FY21 budget.
Mr. Aria? You're muted, Madam Director.
Thank you. Yes, I echo Chief Mancini's sentiments.
The money is available. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So thank you. Just wanted to get that. I'll have Councilwoman Anthony, then Councilman Taylor. Councilwoman Anthony.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, may I just follow up on that?
Vice Chair.
The money, thank you, Mr. Chair. The money is available now, and the money will be available 2021 FYI budget. Is that?
Yes, so-
Thank you.
yes,
Thank you.
So, Madam Leader, while we don't have an adopted budget, it is already included in those adopted budget expenses when we do finally adopt the budget.
That's my point. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Vice Chair. I think just for everybody's edification, the only way the money will not be available next year is if the council takes it out. But at this time, the council, at least at this point, has no intention of taking that money out. So it would be the
I would agree.
administration's decision to do that.
I
So
agree,
just
Mr.
wanna-
Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
I
I'll
agree that
propose
we
that,
would
by
not
the way.
do that.
Propose that. All right, thank you. Councilwoman Anthony, then Councilman Taylor. Councilwoman
Yes,
Anthony.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you for recognizing me. I just would like to correct your mischaracterization. It's not the wealthiest residents of this city that represent the majority of the people asking for defunding of police. Our wards very much respect and value our police. I think the conversations that have resulted from the defunding the police movement have really given us a lot of pause to think about the ways we can rethink our policing in general, and some very good things have come of those discussions, but I think it would be a gross generalization of you to say that it's the wealthiest residents pushing this effort.
Well, Councilman Anthony, thank you very much. I'm just stating by facts, when we had the almost 10-hour public hearing, they all came from actually only 2 or 3 wards, and they were all from the east side and the Federal Hill area. So that's pretty much, those are the wards.
Federal Hill is not.
I'm just, so I appreciate you.
Thank you.
You clarifying that and expanding that the east side is not supporting a defunding effort, sounds like, and is not looking to abolish the police department.
You were putting
It
words
sounds
in you're putting words that there is no one on the east side, I don't think, that is looking to totally defund the police. Now, they are looking for reallocation, which is something totally from totally defunding the police. So it's not all or nothing. It's about a reallocation.
No, I appreciate it. I'm just going by the testimony that I heard for almost 9 hours, that's all. I'm going to have Councilman Taylor, and then I got Councilman Goncalves. Councilman Taylor?
Yes, I know it's too late, and I think I mentioned this before, maybe I didn't, that I'm just looking at local police department employment opportunities. And I know I've mentioned this before. I'm looking at East Providence, City of East Providence employment opportunity, lateral patrol officer. They got a 1-month recruitment. And, you must meet, obviously. So that would be if a policeman is in Providence, they could do a lateral transfer and go to East Providence. Johnston, Cranston, I believe all surrounding police departments do this. I don't know why we do not do this for both police and fire, because it's fire departments do it. I know policemen. Actually, my neighbor was a policeman, Providence policeman for 20 years. And he went to, I believe it was Johnston Police Department after his 20th year. The reason I mention this, it's 2020, and we need to start saving. Like the things that we're hearing that are being held up is a BCI check. Well, if the East Providence policeman's already a policeman, we don't really need to wait 8-12 weeks for a BCI check because they're a policeman. Psych test. If East Providence policeman has been policeman for 20 years, I don't think we have to do a psych test or wait 12 weeks for a psych test. Physical agility, the physical agility, they probably do. I don't know if East Providence does it, but I'm just saying that we need to look at lateral transfers from other departments like they're doing for themselves. Because I don't know how many, maybe the colonel could answer that, but I don't know how many people that we've lost to go to other departments in the last 3 or 4 years since they started doing this. It would be a savings to the city, and we get police officers on the street a lot quicker. They might not be trained to Providence police standards, but at least they're trained. They've got 3/4 of the training. Academy of 3 months maybe could be knocked down to a month for these people, or even less. So I think we really need to, too late now, But and I know I mentioned it before. I think we need to look into that, as well as having an academy every year. But I know people would knock the door down to be a Providence policeman, wherever they are, and I think we'd get some good people out of that, and it would save us a lot of time and money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like to do gun cobs, but then I'd like to go to the next portions, because it's getting late in the evening. I want to get into family services and see if we can do additional funding for the GO program. So, Councilman Guncobs, you have the mic, sir, and then we're going to move on to the next topic, sir. Councilman Guncobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was all very insightful. Commissioner Perry, Chief Clements, I want to thank you for your long-standing service in the city. And also, with all due respect, I'm here to correct the mischaracterization as well. I'm not sure who we define as the wealthier parts of the city, but the wealthy part of the city do not necessarily want to defund the police. I think we're in a very divisive time, but I think what we need now more than ever is unity. And personally, I'm going to rely on our experts for that, our commissioner, our chief, and ultimately we need robust ways of keeping our wards and community safe. And I think we all agree with this. So we want to see our city thrive. We want our city to be safe. And based on the recent uptick in crime that we're seeing in the city, as well as what the commissioner and the colonel have expressed, and they're experts in this space, I appreciate them sharing the ideal number of police officers to keep the city safe. The racial challenges in the city are also important to acknowledge. However, demonizing all police also isn't appropriate, especially when we need to unify the city. With the ideal number of police officers, and this is a question for the commissioner or the colonel, what does that allow the police department to do in terms of addressing violent crime in the city, or moving forth with community policing, walking the beat, or other best practices that further strengthen the bond among police in the community, especially during this time?
Commissioner or Colonel?
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, so everybody likes to see a police officer walking the beat in their neighborhood. We like to see that too, as police leaders. If people feel safe, people comment so often when we're able to do that. And that's just numbers. When we put a police officer on foot, we lose the ability to maneuver that resource real quickly because they're on foot. So, one of the advantages of having a police department that has those resources has an impact on crime, no doubt, and how people feel about their community and their city. So that's one thing. And you probably haven't seen our beat officers because we can't put them on foot because we need them in a car to get to various calls. So that's one of the things. We can invest more in our strategy so we can get ahead of stopping violence and working with various groups that interact with these young kids and adults, that we can find a different path and prevent the crime rather than react to the crime, and invest a lot of money in investigating and incarcerating is a piece. Now, it's not all about, give me 1,000 police officers and I'll eliminate your crime. That's not how that happens. So there's that appropriate level of policing and police officers, coupled with the strategy in identifying what works as a preventative measure. Look, if the community doesn't trust you, they're not going to come to you, and we're not going to be able to be effective. And I'm saying all those things prior to a crime happening. Never mind a crime occurs and now we don't have any witnesses because they don't like the police and they don't trust the police. So I can go on and on about, our strategy, but as we shrink, we pull back in those resources because we have no other, resource to fill whatever that may be, the bike officers and and the motorcycle traffic unit, and on and on. And not only them, people that you don't see not in uniform that doing really great work for the Providence Police to keep a city, safer. And, it's both tricky and it's resource driven. Colonel?
Yes, thank you. And this is a critical point in policing in any city, but certainly in Providence I can speak to. And it is complicated. And we just simply do not have the resources to put out those foot patrols right now, but it's a huge component of what we should be doing. So I'll try to address it in a synopsis of what we should be doing and could be doing with an increased workforce. And I agree, if we had a simple approach of just having 1,000 cops is not going to work. However, it's a comprehensive approach in what we're doing now, eliminating certain calls for service on the police side. I think that's smart to take a good hard look as to the type of calls we can take away from sending uniformed police officers to, number one. Number two, what I always felt was essential in this city was to break it up by district and have many police chiefs, many police departments in each neighborhood. We did this years ago to a great degree of success. I was a district commander in District 5, before then a young councilman, John Igliozzi, and he'll remember.
We used to walk the beat together, Chief. Remember that?
We did. And the way it should work is that we should go to community meetings and we should have a scribe and we should take notes as to what the problems are in that particular community. And in Silver Lake, it may be 7 issues. In Fox Point, it may be 5 issues, some similar, some different. And in Elmhurst, Mount Pleasant, it might be 8 issues. And we take notes, and during the course of the next month or two, before the next meeting, we strategically attack all the problems in that neighborhood with our regular uniform patrols, with our bike patrols, with our foot patrols, with our civilian who works in the community substation and gives every person who filed a police report a call back to show them they're getting a full service approach to problems in their community. And certainly we need an increased traffic division for traffic enforcement, which is a problem in every single neighborhood in this city. So yes, we're down critically in numbers. We all recognize that. I am thankful to the leadership of the council, to this committee, to the chairman, that we're calling for an academy and a large academy, and now we have approval financially, so it's needed. And we can get to a much better place in policing this city with around that number between 450 and 5. I think it's essential for a true community-oriented policing department to have foot patrols.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Colonel.
Well, I'm going to defer to you as the experts, and I want to correct any mischaracterizations about the East Side. Many of my constituents support you, and we need unity. And quite frankly, the black on black crime that we're seeing in our city is very disheartening. No one wants to see that crime happening in our city. So I just really appreciate the chief and the colonel for their insights. And I thank you all for all that you do in keeping our community safe.
Well,
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman.
Vice Chair?
I realize it's getting late, but I know you want to get on to the family services or the GO team. But I just wanted to make one last comment before we make that movement.
Okay.
We should probably be talking about starting another recruiting drive. If it takes this long, I think it would behoove us to start another academy based on what I've heard. We don't need to discuss that tonight, but I think that that's something we should have. That's a discussion we should have with the colonel and our auditor and the commissioner on talking about funding and how that timeline might play out. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time. But we do need to hear from Margaret.
I'd like to go on to the next matter of the topic this evening. I think it's Margaret McDuff from Family Services. Wait, very quickly, Madam Clerk, can you swear her in? She was sworn in, right? I'm sorry. And Ms. McDuff, can you just quickly give a quick synopsis of the GO team, the interaction with the police department, and by the way, and the funding you have, and how much funding you would need to expand your program citywide? That's the key question we're looking for this evening. You have the mic.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. So thank you so much for having me here tonight to talk about the GO team. So the GO team has been a part of the city of Providence for over 16 years now in partnership with the Providence Police. We have police liaisons that are actually skilled in a lot of different skills, including their trauma experts, as well as de-escalation, as well as they're really experts in making sure that people get the services that they need. So making sure that they link them up to the services that they need. It might be counseling for domestic violence. It might be they're homeless and they need housing. It could be a variety of different basic needs. So the GO team has been doing that for 16 years. It has 24-hour services. So we provide on-call. We respond to everything from child deaths and working with a family that is going through that traumatic moment and working with that family longer term a lot of the time, to domestic violence situations, to actually follow-ups when everyone has time on victims of crime. So it might be a domestic violence victim that we're following up with to make sure that they're got all the resources that they need, including transportation to be able to get to court, that there's translation services for them, to a variety of different things. It's been key in the GO team is the partnership with the Providence Police and the trust that we've developed over the years. I think I said in the last time I was here, really developing those relationships at the district level too. When we first started, I couldn't agree with the Colonel more around having those relationships in the district. The Colonel, when he was the district commander, was part of developing the GO team. And so that's been the key part. Right now, it's at, we have an office at the central location for the police department. So does that answer questions about the GO team? Is there anything else?
Yeah, Ms. McDuff, I think you said how much money it's right now, what you guys are expending right now to perform your program. And then you stated, and I don't want to mischaracterize how much it was, but you stated the amount of money that you thought you could use, if you acquired from the city, how you could expand the program. So could you tell us how much money right now it's costing Family Services to provide this program, and how much it would cost to expand the program?
So right now it's costing Family Service about $240,000 for the program, and that's from a variety of sources. I'm glad that you asked this question, and it's very timely because our major funder for this program is the Victims of Crime Act. Through the Department of Justice, the Victims of Crime Act brings dollars down to the state of Rhode Island. We apply on an annual basis for our services for the GO team, and we have traditionally been funded at about $150,000 to $160,000. This past year, the federal year starts October 1st. So we requested $186,000 cost of living cost, as well as additional resources for our on-call team, as well as some additional costs due to COVID as well. Unfortunately, the federal government cut Rhode Island's allocation along with other states by about 50%. So our allocation this year for the GO team that we were notified of last week, but that started on October 1st, is $80,000. So, and it's cost, we were counting on 186 to fill our budget. So we're still reeling from that right now in the budgets that we calculated today. Right now, the GO teams functions with 2.5 people on a very obviously limited staff. So 2.5 people that work endless hours, and we'll have to cut that down to 1 person. And we still are able to fund, and we'll be able to piece together with some donations an on-call system. We really feel like the on-call is critical to the police, and we're going to be talking to the Colonel, and the Colonel and I have to meet I really want the police department to be part of the final decision. But the on-call, making sure that we're there when the officers need us and the families need us in those crisis emergencies, those really critical emergencies, is a key part. And it's not as costly as having staff members. So to go citywide, it would be, we have 9 districts. We have one team now that cost us about, about $225. So to go district wide, you time that, if we had one in each district, there's 9 districts, so it's times 9. And then any additional leadership that we would need.
Okay. And at this time, about how many, when prior to this potential cut, or this cut is happening,
Sure.
how many calls did Family Services go to with the, how many calls did it do, how many calls did it perform with the Providence Police Department? Like, how did it work? No.
So there's a variety of calls. There's some emergency calls. There's some calls that we do on routine ride-alongs as well. So last year there was, in our reporting that we have to do to the victims of crime, to the Department of Justice, there was just over 1,000 individuals that were impacted by on-call, by responding from the GO team.
Okay. So to go citywide or to expand your service, right now is about $2 million.
Yes.
Right, okay. And then you get some federal dollars and you get some other dollars, you said too, correct?
Well, we only get the federal dollars through VOCA, so we don't get any direct federal funds for the program. We did get this past year $37,000 from the City of Providence through the Community Development Block Grant Fund, as well as we have a few foundations like the Hazard Foundation, the Levy Foundation, that have been generous. But again, we have to apply for those every year.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Vice Chair, you have some questions?
Those were a lot of numbers, and I'm usually pretty good with numbers, and maybe I'm a little tired tonight. So you've lost some funding. I guess I had $80,000. It's funny that that's kind of what your funding is reduced to from your federal nonviolence grant. But I guess if you could just answer the question for us. In committee, you testified previously that if you were to add or dedicate a GO team member to each police community office, you shot out a number what that structure would be. So I guess that's the number I'm looking for, but I'm also now looking for, you need money to replenish the dollars that you lost in this year's grant. So can you give us 2 buckets of funding to fill those holes?
So the funding that we lost this year is $117,000. So that's the hole that we would need to fill to be able to make whole for what we currently have. The budget, and I should have written it down, but the budget for one person in each district is very different than what if we would replicate the GO team as it is now in each district, because right now we do have coverage. Because if you just have one person, they go on vacation, there's no coverage.
So what is a GO team? What does it cost to have a GO team operating in each district?
So it's operating at about just about 220,000, so times 9, and I think the chairman figured it out. It's just about $2 million. Yes.
That was the number. Okay.
Yeah.
Vice Chair, 9 districts. Correct me if I'm wrong, 9 districts. If you're going to do a full complement of GO team for each district, is about 225,000, which came out to about $2,025,000 total.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. That's fantastic. And, okay.
I do want to reiterate what the colonel said about having the relationships in the community. And I think I talked about that last time too, that, just like the police, we also are about building trust and building those relationships and identifying the needs with the community members and partnering with the community to really understand what they need, and what's needed maybe on Federal Hill is not the same as the West End, is not the same as Fox Point or Roneyville. So that's why as I've said at this committee, I've also shared it with the Providence Journal, and they published it, which I was happy, that would be my ideal, because I think that's so important.
Great. So I think we always talked about how to start expanding existing programs with dollars that we can. 2 million, I realize that we may not have all that, but there may be a process where we can still help increase some of that funding to start expanding those services throughout the city. Internal auditor, I know there's been conversations. Can you weigh in that conversation? We may not, I don't know if we can get to the 2 million, but we may be able to help with some of this, I think, and to also acquire some services. General, can you help us in enlighten us on this issue?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Actually, in one of the police department line items, there's of about 215,000. This is the fiscal year 20 budget, and this was for the speed cameras. So there's 215,000 that is available. You have the non-general fund for grants. Maybe relook at them. There's in there that's just says sustainability. We haven't gotten to discuss what that's for. Maybe prioritize the GO team. Again, that would be up to the elected officials to do. And that was just looking at the police department. So there is and that amount of money is available now because it is the fiscal year 20 budget, which we are operating under now.
Okay. So there is some funding that we possibly could help. So I think this is what we need to further drill down on. That's why we brought them forward this evening to start discussing this process. Can you do some additional math on that for us in the real immediate future, and then come back with something that's a little more concrete and maybe substantial we can see? Then we can have a conversation with the committee and council and see if this is something folks may like to consider. Vice Chair?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And thank you very much, Margaret, for your testimony and for working with this committee. I think that I'd like to suggest, Mr. Chair, that it might be prudent and fruitful if we had Margaret working with the commissioner and the colonel on trying to make sense as to what GO team looks like, and as an expansion to complement the police at this point, and then to pull in Gina, our treasurer, our auditor, to try to figure out where those the funding might be. So that's my suggestion.
I think it's a great suggestion. Internal Auditor, Commissioner, Colonel, would you be willing to work in a collaborative effort with Family Services and see if we can maybe work something out on a proposal, by the way?
Yes.
Would love to.
Absolutely.
They do fabulous work. So if we can find resources, I think it only benefits everyone that has the same interest.
Wonderful.
And Mr. Chair, I serve on the board, the Family Service Board, and Margaret and I can put this together in some sensible terms for the committee.
Absolutely.
I thank you all for that collaborative work. I think that'll be very beneficial to all of us. I think, unfortunately, it's getting a little late in the hour. Are there any comments or questions on the family service matter right now?
No, Mr. Chair. I think we've accomplished a lot tonight, and I appreciate your help.
Thank you. So I would just ask, I would ask that Gina, of course, the Commissioner, the Colonel, Mr. Duff, stop, getting together the next couple of weeks, and maybe you can come back and give us an idea of hopefully a good financial proposal on hopefully to expand or begin even if it's the baby steps to expansion, how we can get to a bigger program. All right.
Terrific.
So I want to give that with all the committee members. I want all the committee members and the council members, by the way, for participating this evening. Willing to listen, to help educate and discuss. But I also I have to give also a note of thanks on behalf of my community to Colonel Clemens and the Providence Police Department in particular, just recently, and this is very important, by the way. It says the Colonel mentioned in the old days, him and I would actually walk the beat together. Unfortunately, that's me showing my age of how things actually, there were positive things that did happen, and we would, meet the neighbors and meet the store owners, and there would be a real connection between the Providence Police Department and the community. And that's something that I know for my constituents are looking for again. They're looking for that relationship again. So I want to point that out again. But also, just recently, actually, unfortunately, it's a good thing, but it's a sad thing. Just recently, at one of the best parks in the city, and yes, I will say that, Nunnaconnecut Park, unfortunately, the Providence Police, doing a phenomenal job just recently, took a dangerous individual off the street. The individual had weapons, ammunition, guns, drugs, and they were stationed right in the heart of Nunnaconnecut Park in their vehicle. And it was through the due diligence and excellent police work of two fine police officers who take their job serious, who are committed to the job, and apply it accordingly. And they saw some issues, they saw an activity, and they ended up arresting a guy who was 25 years old, if I may say so, folks, who was with a 16-year-old girl in a car with guns, I believe booze, and drugs. And if it wasn't for the Providence Police Department doing what police does, proactive police work, finding out how things are going. They went into the park area, the skateboard area, they saw the cars parked, they inquired, they discussed, and they took someone, by the way, off the streets who had illegal weapons, marijuana, etc., off our street. And unfortunately, by the way, when you read it, and I want to commend the colonel, of course the commissioner, but the fine work of the Providence Police Department, because those are the events that happen that people need to talk about, of positive, proactive police work. And these officers were just simply doing their job. It wasn't a call. They just simply were inquiring. They did a simple review, and they uncovered, let's call it as, someone that is not the most savory of individuals. And by the way, once again, for me, what makes me concerned is that here's an individual who's 25 years old with a 16-year-old girl in the car. And it seems like they were inebriated, some potentially, I guess, under the influence. So they potentially took, helped a young lady come out of get out of a very serious situation. So I want to thank you, Chief, and because it's right down the street from me, right where I live. And you know what? Our parks need to be safe. Our constituents need to feel safe. And I want to thank you. And unfortunately, this stuff happens. This is real gritty things that happen in our great city. But if it isn't for our great police department, these things will continue. So that's also part of the reason why I support the initiative with expanding our police department, making it better. I'm implementing reforms that I myself have seen implemented over the years, and also hopefully expanding social services to help our constituents. So, these are the things my constituents are clamoring for, and I can say that is a fact. So I want to thank you all for participating, Director McDuff, as Vice Chair for bringing this issue to the forefront and being a high advocate, by the way, of defending and protecting the public safety. Commissioner, I want to thank you, Ms. Richards, all the council committee members, and Mr. Mancini, Madam Finance Director, and of course, Ms. McDuff again, and Internal Law and the Treasurer, and everybody else involved. With that said, I believe there's no more further business before this.
Motion to adjourn.
Second by Councilman Castillo. Discussion. All in favor?